Should you attempt PRs in competition or save it for training? What would make weightlifting meets more exciting? And who are the most underrated weightlifters at nationals this year? In episode 37 of the Last Set, Best Set podcast, Coach Calvin and I dive deep answering these questions and more. And if you want your question answered on next week's episode, then make sure to leave a comment down below. Welcome back to the Last Set, Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength. I've been teaching Olympic lifting for the last 11 years now.
And I am Coach Calvin. I'm current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting program, as well as a 2025 National University champion and a coach through Big Ben Strength.
And today we're going to be answering some questions that you guys submitted to us, starting with question number 1. Should you go heavier in training or in competition? This is kind of a timely question. We just wrapped up Nationals week, so everybody's kind of thinking about competitions, their next competition, how they did it this last one, whether they chose the correct attempts or not. But you leading up to it, you posted something on your story that I think got people a little bit heated, or at least you were getting a little heated about it. So what's going on with this? Give us some backstory here.
I was sort of fighting like a bit of a one-sided argument against people, I'd say, because a lot of people like to say oh, well, what are you gonna hit at nationals? And that's just a funny question to me, to be like, okay, well, I don't know, nobody knows. So it's almost like, in a way, it's like me being mad at somebody asking how your day is, and you always just saying good, and that's in my brain. I'm like, it's kind of dumb that I was kind of taking a stand against this kind of thinking about competition, but there is a point to be made when it comes to this. And that point is kind of that a competition day is a day just like any other day in training. And so in the same way that I can't go into a training day saying, I know I'm going to hit, this top end number, I can't say that about comp day as well. It's not just because it's a competition you're going to have the adrenaline where you can hit some massive lift. I definitely think adrenaline and, a competition environment really can elevate your performance. But when we're talking about such a technical sport and a strength sport like Olympic weightlifting, even after a taper, you're in the best chance to perform, but the likelihood that you're going to blow things out of the water and hit 10 kg PRs on every, it's not making a huge difference. So the point is that it's a day like just any other day, and you never know what's going to happen. You never know how you're going to feel. You might even feel great and then still perform poorly. Or you might feel horrible and perform great. We've all been there. We've all had those days where we feel awful and perform really well. And for me, that was even a week out. I hit a 5 kg clean and jerk PR a week from comp. On a day I walked in and I was like, dude, I'm not doing ish today because this is I am not feeling good. Took forever to warm up and somehow ended up working up to 177 kilo clean and jerk. So days like that happen, and we all know they happen. So I know, Brian, you said that this one kind of got you thinking too, and you maybe shifted your mindset a little bit. Talk about that.
Yeah, I've kind of had this belief for a long time anyway, but it is about the idea that I think most coaches would probably agree that 95% plus of your max on any given day is really just chance at that point. You can do things to prepare you to be closer and closer to hitting those kinds of weights. If you're in an off season, you're probably not going to hit 95% plus, but if you're super peaked, you have a higher chance of it. But anything over that, who knows, really? So when people talk about whether or not I'm going to hit a PR in competition, that is not even close to a concern of mine. I'm not even thinking about planning attempts around PRs. I'm thinking about how is the athlete moving on the day, what are they prepared for, and is that actually going to happen or not, But then kind of if we think about the idea that 95% plus on any given day is a crapshoot one way or another, the likelihood that you're going to hit that PR on comp day in a less optimal, training environment than you're used to, less optimal experience or circumstances. You don't have all your equipment to warm up on. You don't have all the, you don't have control over the playlist that's playing over the speakers, that kind of thing. With less of those things going in your favor, you're less likely to be able to hit those PRs anyway. So to me, it makes sense that we should probably just try and make sure that we hit our heaviest lifts in training, and then, depending on how things are looking leading up to the competition, we kind of build our attempts based around that, rather than like the idea of hitting a PR on the one competition day of the year. And it really did kind of shift my mindset a little bit, where it solidified. I think I've always been a little bit more of a bigger lifts in training kind of person, but I think that kind of concept really solidified it for me, that just above 95%, it's any given day could be up or down. Who knows? So that's kind of my opinion. Now, there are absolutely some things that you can do that will guarantee that you're going to be more likely to hit some of those things, like hit some of those top end PRs.
My 12-week weightlifting program is available in the description of this video. I put a lot of time into this 12-week program, and we also have a new 12-week volume cycle, perfect for this summertime, get you kind of jacked, as well as building a ton of work capacity for those Olympic lifts. A volume program like this is what most people are missing in their training. 12 weeks, going through 10s, 8s, and 6s in the strength movements. 3, 2, 1 in the Olympic lifts. It's going to get you set up for a really great school year of lifting if you're in high school, or if you're just a beginner lifter. This is going to set up your weightlifting career for a lot of success in the future. Be sure to go check both of those programs out down in the description below. Thank you.
So what are some signs that you're looking at when you're deciding whether or not it does make sense to go for a PR?
Yeah, in competition, a lot of the times, like, I think this is a good attitude to have, sort of like saving it for the stage a little bit, especially if you're a week out. You don't want to take, so many PR attempts at a clean and jerk.
Yeah.
Whether you're going to make it or miss it or whatever, you don't want to go crazy a week out, because there is still some kind of residual fatigue that'll transfer into that meet. But some signs to know that you're capable of it on stage, because in my opinion, I've hit at least like five or six PRs on stage, like all-time lifetime PRs on stage. So again, it's also kind of funny that like I'm the one like on my Instagram story being like, "Oh, competitions aren't for PRs," but you'll know when you're ready for a PR. You don't force it to happen because you hit that competition. Some signs that you're ready are especially PR, doubles and triples. Maybe that double is exceeding, 93, 94, 95% of your 1 rep max. If those are getting really close, that's a great sign that you're going to hit some really heavy lifts on the 1 rep max soon. I'd say consistency is really a big one, like bringing up your minimums. Mm-hmm. That minimum weight that you're hitting every heavy day, the weight that you haven't missed anything under that weight. You haven't missed that weight or anything under it. If that number's rising, that top end number is probably going up pretty soon. Some other stuff, PRing on variations like that you push. If you push a power snatch often in your training, and your power snatches are going really well, and you PR on a power snatch, yeah, you're probably a lot more likely to PR on the full snatch as well. Seeing those strength lifts go up is a really big thing for me in my training. I know that I'm in really good shape when my speed is really good on the strength lifts, when my speed at heavy percentages and squats is feeling really good. It might not necessarily be the top end weight. Like I might not be able to push, 230 kilos in the squat, but if I'm moving 200 really fast and really well, I know I'm kind of in good shape for Olympic lifting, because that's a lot more similar to Olympic lifting than moving a heavy, slow squat at the end of the day. So there's some signs I kind of look for when it comes to like knowing when a PR is due. And you can take this into a competition too. You have to kind of take a holistic view of your body and know what you're capable of. So some people, will go either side of that. Some people will think they're capable of less. And maybe they don't even believe that they could hit their PR on stage. They could match their PR even. Other people are very extremely delusional about what they might hit on stage. This could include, thinking that they're going to just automatically match their PR on their second attempt and hit a new PR on their third attempt just because they did it once. Just because you hit a weight once does not mean it's unlocked forever. A lot of kids kind of fall into that mindset because sort of sometimes that is how it is in the very, very early days of training. You first hit 135 snatch, and then maybe, you just keep hitting the one plate snatch, and you don't ever really, you can do that every day. That's kind of how it is sometimes in the very early stages. Later, nope, not the same way.
100%.
Yeah, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes a ton of sense. I wish more people knew that the idea of like of once you hit a PR, it's not like you've unlocked that forever. You've got to keep earning that PR every single time that you go for it again. There are some instances where it makes sense to try and go for PRs in competition. I think some of those would be like, where you've been training so hard, but you haven't actually retested that max for such a long time that it would be just unreasonable that you hadn't PR'd yet. But there are indicators that are leading up to that that that's probably going to be the case. So like some examples of that would be like, you've taken old 1 rep maxes and done them for a 1+2 clean and jerk, or a snatch pull plus a snatch complex or something like that. Like that's something that is a lot more common to see, where people are hitting their old maxes for harder versions of that lift, where you haven't technically retested your max. But I mean, if we're hitting a 1+2 with your old 1 rep max, you've got a new max. Like it's there. And then other things are just like, you just have been training really hard, building a strong base, but you just haven't quite retested it yet. That's usually a sign that you're probably ready for it. Now, a sign that you're not ready to take PRs is that you have your heavy days, and one heavy day from week 1 to week 2 looks completely different. Like a massive spread between what your top end weight is usually a good sign that you are not ready to take a PR attempt, because your consistency is not there. It's not going to lend itself to hitting that. And consistency is another thing, right? So if you like don't remember the last time you missed a snatch or missed a clean and jerk, you're probably ready to take a PR, assuming that those that you haven't missed are not just like 60% lifts, So that's something I wish more people would do, is kind of just know that they've got a little bit more in the tank by having all these other variations and all these complexes and things like that, and just kind of like saving it all up a little bit more. I think would be good for people.
Yeah, my coach has this analogy where he talks about planting the seed and waiting for it to grow. So this is a good one, because if you've ever grown any plant of any kind, or if you've ever done any gardening, you can't just keep digging up whatever you planted with, where maybe we're growing carrots or something, right? Let's say we're growing a carrot. You can't just keep digging up the carrot and checking on it to see its progress. You know when it's ready because the signs tell you it's ready. You see, a certain level of, sprouts coming out of the top of the ground. You know that it takes this long for a carrot to grow. You know that the carrot season, I've never grown a carrot, but maybe they're ready in the spring. And if you plant them in the fall, they're ready by springtime. And there's similar stuff when it comes to weightlifting. Although weightlifting, I'd say, is a lot more random. There's a lot more unknowns and randomness about when things are ready. But like we talked about, we just mentioned all these signs that it's ready to dig up. But if you just keep digging it up all the time and keep testing your PR all the time and keep trying to PR, you're not going to make that progress, actually. And you're just going to frustrate yourself because you're trying to PR too often. And another thing I wanted to bring up is that I did kind of realize once bringing up this sort of debate on my Instagram was that some people, when it comes to competitions, let's say you're in the D session at Nationals, you're not really competing against other people. You are, and then sometimes you just don't feel that way because you're not going for medal positions. You are really just kind of versus yourself. You can try and win the session, like that's kind of a fun goal. But maybe you're not even at that point where you're like, I know I'm not winning this session, just because these guys have way bigger entry totals at the top of it. And so you do kind of have to set other goals because, I'm talking about for myself, if I'm looking at medal positions at Nationals, I'm going there to compete. I'm going there to try and win the best medal I can. And that's the good goal for me. Maybe somebody even at a higher level than me is going there just to hit a total to make a Team USA team. They don't even care about maybe what their placement is in that competition. They're just trying to compete to make that international team. Uh, so that can be a thing. Sometimes you go and you just want to hit a stipend total. Super high level athletes, they want to get their funding secured from USA Weightlifting. There's so many different goals you could have about going into competition. It seems to me, though, that people hyperfixate on the numbers-based PR goal as
Hmm.
being like the main reason why someone would do it. Oh, I'm going to the competition to PR. Oh, are you going to hit, 140, 180, Calvin? Like, no, that's not the reason I'm going there. Um, and I don't think it should be anybody's reason to go to PR because you're setting yourself up for failure there. I think a really good goal is to make all your lifts. Go 6 for 6 or 5 for 6. That's a great goal because it means you're being realistic with yourself while still pushing yourself. I think that 5 for 6 zone is probably a good spot to be in, regardless of where those numbers are compared to your all-time PRs. So
Yeah. And let's also not forget about the idea of competition PRs. These are very important PRs to track, and for a lot of people, especially in that youth and junior level, their competition PR is going to be lower than their training PR. That's pretty normal. Um, so like hitting competition PRs is a huge goal because it actually boosts up your national ranking if you are trying to eventually work towards those. That's what matters, right? So like focusing on boosting up your competition PR total, even if it's not necessarily boosting up your actual total or your training total. I wish more people would kind of uh, remember that competition PR matters too.
there's some people too. If you talk to them, they'll be like the competition total or competition PR is the only PR that matters.
Yeah,
They don't even care what you do in training. They're like, well, what'd you hit in comp? As sort of being like the gold standard of all things are equal um, among all lifters kind of thing.
right.
You definitely had a 2 hour weigh in. Everybody had a 2 hour weigh in when it comes to this competition. Everybody had the backroom experience at a national meet or something, for instance. So I think that is kind of dumb. I think PRs in training, of course, matter, and really good athletes do get very close to their training PRs or exceed them in competition. Uh, so I think that it's a funny hill to die on to be like, well, competition is the only thing that matters.
Right.
Like,
Like,
there's
dude, this is a hobby for like
yeah,
90% of the people in this sport.
um, but yeah, it's an interesting topic, especially in the timeliness of Nationals Week, and probably a lot of the youth athletes kind of competing and learning all those lessons that I learned early in my competition career, and so many other weightlifters have learned or have not learned along the way of their
Yeah.
weightlifting journey. So
Yeah, when we started talking about it, I put up a poll on our Instagram, and it was like a 60-40 split between people saying that you should PR in competition and 40% saying that you should PR in training. And then like lots of debates happening in the Instagram DMs. That was kind of funny. Um, it's just, yeah, all that to say there's not really a a definitive path there with how you should choose your competition attempts. At the end of the day, you still just have to carefully assess where you're actually at for that day, not where you think you should be, and take the attempts that make the most sense for you. And that's pretty much it, whether that's a PR or whether that's just enough to win the total or win that session or win your weight class. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be PRs in competition just because it's a competition. It's just do whatever you need to for the goal that you set out when going into that competition, when registering.
100%.
Um, yeah. All right. Why don't we go ahead and get into our next question here? We're keeping that weightlifting competition theme going. Question number 2: what would make weightlifting meets more exciting? I saw this kind of debate start sparking on Instagram the other day, and so I kind of wanted to get into it and see what people thought about this. So I'm curious, when you guys listen to this, let us know in the comments. You can comment on YouTube. You can also comment on Spotify too. So if you guys are on Spotify and listening, you can leave a comment there. Let us know what you think would make a weightlifting meet more exciting. We've got a couple of different things here that I think would be kind of fun. So first, let's go over some changes that will just be applied to the event, but not necessarily to the rules of the competition, and then we'll get into some other ones that could be fun as well. So what's a big one for you that you think would make weightlifting meets a little bit more exciting?
I think a big thing for me is a little bit to do with the announcement and announcing of the competition. I'm a little confused why the announcer. I understand that staffing is limited, but to have the announcer like telling all the loaders what to do on the regular mic is funny to me.
Yeah.
It just adds all this kind of like noise that isn't important for a regular viewer, um, without adding much of anything. You can see the number on the screen,
Right.
like announcing the number once, like okay, it kind of makes sense. Like here goes so and so with this. Much more important for the viewer experience is understanding, oh, this is the heaviest opener so and so has ever done.
Taking a quick break from the episode to let you know about the OlyStrong team. The OlyStrong team is my online group coaching option for lifters who are looking to improve their technique, get strong, and set PRs. It includes your choice of 3 or 5 days a week of workouts, daily video feedback, and unlimited coach messaging to ask as many questions as you'd like for less than $1 a day. If you're ready to get started, then click the link in the description below for a free week trial today. All right, back to the show.
At a national competition.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is a competition PR for so and so, or maybe even going into a meet. If you just submitted maybe a list, you could say, oh, this is my all-time PR in training. This is what I hit in training, and then the announcer will know. Oh, well, this is an all-time PR. They've never hit this in their lives before. Let's really give it up for them. That just adds more storylines. How can we add storylines to a weightlifting meet? That is my big thing, because especially with the social media kind of landscape, that's the biggest lesson I learned kind of making content, is you have to tell a story. Nobody cares about your lift just as your lift. If you're not lifting a world record, not many people, or if you're not lifting world-class weight, you're going to have to figure out a different way to get people to watch and get people interested. And story is the best way to do that. So, talking about, say it's at Colorado Nationals this past week, talking about, oh, last time this athlete was at Colorado Nationals, they only hit this number, and now they're opening higher than that. Like, crazy, this is great. Why aren't we saying this stuff, Just doing a little bit more preparations as an announcer and cutting a little bit more fluff, I think could really improve the viewer experience, as well as if there was a more streamlined way to watch it, that made more sense. That there's an announcer on the stream as well that's doing commentary a lot of the time. If we could kind of like streamline all of that, so the announcer on the platform was the one also as part of the stream.
Dude, yeah, that's actually a really great point, because the commentary that they do for sessions is actually really good. Like, the commentary for sessions is really great compared to the announcing. Like, I think that they should just ditch the announcers completely and have just the commentary be live. Or, if you have to have commentary for the viewers, right, that are watching online, then that means that I think we should probably have like professional announcers for events who come prepared for the session that they're announcing. They have all the details about each of the athletes that are competing. They know what their PRs are. They know the kind of the meaning behind a lot of the things. And I think that the announcer's job should not be to, keep the flow of competition going. The announcer's job should be to talk to the audience that's watching. So the audience, the announcer should be looking at the audience as they're announcing what's happening, right? So that they can judge basically like the crowd's understanding of the event. If people look confused, the announcer should be clarifying things, right? Like, sometimes, a lot of the time they're not even talking about the changes. They'll talk about the changes if it's like an inside joke, but the audience has no idea what's happening. So I would love to see announcers kind of really step up that. I think in general could make weightlifting meets really exciting. And add a little bit more understanding to the audience who, your grandma doesn't really understand the rules of this and everything just looks heavy to her. How do we get them excited about the event as much as somebody else who's a diehard weightlifting enthusiast? Something else that would be really good is just the production value of the event itself. Who does this really well is powerlifters. Powerlifting meets, I see clips of them all the time, like the Sheffield powerlifting meet looks insane. They've got this like pretty sick screen that's going on behind them, and it's not just like a bowling alley animation going up, but it like looks cool. And then that kind of stuff. The lighting is important in this. Like, they've got dark lighting with spotlight, so it looks intense on the pictures that are taken and the videos that are taken afterwards. Like, that kind of thing can really take the weightlifting meet just to another level. But then you said something that I think would be really cool. is walkout songs.
Yeah, this is one that I've heard come up multiple times, or I've heard other people mention it, and that's like such a great idea. Just to add a little, I mean, we're already playing music here. It does kind of I see the challenges when it comes to like a three platform setup.
Yeah.
At nationals, like they're playing the same song for all three platforms. So there's definitely challenges when it comes to like organizing this type of thing. Um, but I think adding like some sort of personalization to uh, the competition experience in that way
Hmm.
would be helpful for a lot of athletes. Yeah, I will kind of like address those challenges though, because yeah, how do you really fit that into the system that's there right now? I see how that would be tough. So I
Oh
wonder
yeah,
how
and
they.
I mean, it would have to be changed. Like, there's no way that you could use the same system now, and I don't think that we'll see this at like nationals happen. But I think that we'll see this. I feel like weightlifting hasn't really had this happen yet, but there needs to be a couple big name weightlifting events that are not nationals or a USA weightlifting national level meet, but just a cool event to go to. It's kind of weird that weightlifting doesn't really have that right now. I've been thinking about this a little bit more because I would like to maybe put something together like this, but it would be really neat to have just like one competition that's just ridiculous production value, and it seems like absurd that it's just a weightlifting meet that's like a local meet. But I think things like that would attract more people to it.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that would be pretty cool. Yeah, and there's been some meets in the past that are like that. They used to do one down in I think Tampa somewhere that was like I don't even remember the name of it, but it was a really cool event. Miami's got their they've got their thing that they do at Wadapalooza that's like a different non-traditional weightlifting meet. That's kind of interesting as another approach too, and that's always a great seems like a great time at those.
Yeah, another thing like because we're kind of talking a lot more about kind of changes to how the events run within the current rules. When it comes to like maybe possibly changing those rules, there's a few things that come to my mind. I think a way that could make things really cool is allowing perhaps extra attempts.
Mm.
Like if the medals are decided, maybe you get a fourth attempt for each medalist. At the end of the session, for to change up any of the rankings, and if someone beats your place, then you get another attempt too, and you're able to try and one up them, or keep the competition kind of going. I think about a video that we were working on for my YouTube channel, where me and my teammate Cam, went head to head against each other, and it really was just a max out to see who could get the best Sinclair. Um, there's an idea right there, even a best lifter platform, kind of like how they do the Rogue stage
Hmm.
at where maybe everybody's competing for the best Sinclair among the meet. And you could throw even more like kind of prizes or something for that to make it kind of hype, because it would just be a one session type of thing where you're competing for the best Sinclair for $5,000 or whatever at nationals. Like I think that's something powerlifting, like you said, and bodybuilding do kind of well, is that there's a lot of times cash prizes associated, um, which I'm sure is, like I said, we're just idea people right here. I'm sure there's a million challenges associated with doing that kind of thing, but
But you know what? Not my problem. Just an
yeah,
idea person.
I definitely think there's value to the cash prize or the incentive system, other than just like I really love doing this. Like even if I mean, people are only going to do it if they really love doing it, but adding some kind of prize or some kind of incentive, that kind of carrot dangling on the stick, could really level up a lot of the competitions. Like I definitely think that's something like you were talking about. Like if there was a local meet that was just like crazy crash prize kind of thing,
Hmm.
um, like if you could round up sponsors that really like blew it up or something.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
like
easily could be done.
yeah, well, I mean,
Something else that would be. I mean, especially if we're going to talk rule changes, like there's some interesting ones. Obviously, the big one is like eliminating the press out rule to because there's just no point for it. It's an old boys rule. It makes no sense that it's there. Get the weight over your head. To me, that would make the competition a lot more exciting. Would eliminate the whole like, oh, but was it good enough? No, dude, this is the most objective sport in the world. Did you lift more weight over your head than somebody else? What are we talking about? These just made up rules of like, oh, but was it better than somebody else's other same lift? It's absolutely ridiculous. I can't stand the press out rule. But something else that would be kind of interesting too would be like, challenge cards. I don't even know what that would look like, but maybe that's like, maybe that's maybe I don't even know what a challenge card could look like, but something around that could be interesting. Um, Something else that could be kind of interesting is not allowing changes to your attempts and making everybody declare their first, second, and third attempt up front. Could be interesting. So it's all kept secret from everybody else who's competing, but declaring what your first, second, and third are up front could add a little bit of spectatorship into it, or a little bit of competition flair, I think, would be kind of interesting too. That change obviously would very much change the entire
Yeah,
sport for sure.
I
But
kind of
could be
like
interesting.
I kind of like the idea of maybe like you got no changes on your opener. That
That's a
would
good
maybe
idea.
be a better way to go about it. Because then you're kind of locked into like what's your kind of what you're capable of on your opener,
Hmm.
uh, and then the game really starts after everyone opens kind of thing.
That's a good idea. Actually, that would make things a lot more.
And that way,
What's it would
you
also
could
like make the back room flow a lot better too. Honestly, with everybody,
yeah,
because everybody changes their attempt by like 5 kilos, except for the two CrossFit coaches that didn't know that that was allowed. Like
um,
um, I think that would be kind of interesting. That's a good idea too, for sure. Um,
and challenge cards they do sort of exist in some capacity. They gave them at senior nationals A sessions at Colorado this year, and I mean we almost used one on a press out call for James Tice when he was competing. We decided against it because we could see the press, so we are just like whatever. Um, but there is a jury already that sort of like will get involved if they think they see something that needs to be
yeah,
reviewed. But that challenge card does kind of give you an opportunity, especially when it's people competing for, like I said, like stipend money, or international teams that are a big deal for a high level senior athlete that maybe is sacrificing like working a regular job and starting a family to pursue weightlifting. Uh, the crazy fame and money that is associated with weightlifting. Um, but yeah, so that challenge cards they kind of do exist. It was 100% just a printed piece of paper that was cut from. It was like a normal sized piece of paper that was like cut in two, and then they made like 10 of them. Um,
nice.
and it was like you could like see like the margins were like messed up, but you know, uh, such as weightlifting, and I think those work kind of appropriately as to what they're supposed to work at. I think there could be a bit of simplification when it comes to like some rules, um, like we talk about with the press out rule, um, because not people really aren't in agreement that it should be judged the same at different levels of the sport,
Hmm.
and that's not how rules should work. Rules
And,
should
and
be
you know what? You also shouldn't have sessions like, I'll walk onto a platform sometimes and somebody will just be like, hey, just a heads up, they're pretty lax on their judging right now. Or I walk into others and they're like, they're being absurdly strict. We shouldn't have to worry about that whatsoever.
yeah, and there is sort of a conversation where it's like, well, if you're really good in training about working on your issues and making sure you don't press, then you have nothing to worry about with any judge in a way.
Yeah.
Time. So that's definitely one thing, but let's be honest, not everybody's built perfect for overhead, holding things overhead or pressing things overhead, and some people work really hard and they still struggle with those positions or with press out or timing or whatever, right? And so I just think like you look at basketball and you look at kids basketball and they don't even have to dribble, like at a certain age. It's like, yeah, there should definitely be some of that applied to weightlifting where
Mm.
there's no press out rule until you get to U15 or something, right? Um, or it's literally in the rules as being judged differently if it still exists. That's the change I think needs to happen.
Hmm.
Um, it can be judged the same way it is now from like the junior level up or the U17 level up. Um, those are the ones that are going to go to compete at international competitions. But like, yeah, expecting a masters lifter, like why are we putting judges in the position where we're going to let them see a masters lifter, do some crazy press, and then still some people are going to give them a white light because they're like, okay, yeah, it's a masters lifter, like I want to be nice, and then other ones are like, well, I know this is the rule, so I have to follow the rule. This is so confusing for judges, and it puts them kind of in a moral dilemma when it comes to, especially like I said, like young kids, or like even when it comes to maybe some like adaptive athletes, like what are the guidelines there? I saw a guy in a wheelchair competing, and somebody like red lighted him on something, and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. like,
Yeah. What are we talking
like
about?
okay, on that one, I think it might have been downward movement. I think that's what they red lighted him on. I don't know. Well, because he was in a wheelchair, and they set the bar essentially kind of like on his lap, and then he essentially kind of muscle snatched it up.
Okay.
And so I was like, wait, are they calling him for a press out? Like, there's no way. Like, I don't know. Maybe he like had like one go down and then back up, but maybe hopefully it was just a malfunction in the system. But yeah, I was just like, dude, this is crazy. He put the weight overhead. Like he's adaptive. Like the rules can't be so strict that they're applied to everyone in every circumstance in the exact same way. The rules need to accommodate for different ability levels, and understandings of different challenges that might be presented, like being in a wheelchair or just being a masters athlete.
Hey guys, quick interruption because I'm excited to announce the dates for our 3rd annual summer training camp. This summer, Coach Calvin and I want to invite you to come train with us in Tallahassee, Florida from July 23rd through the 27th. We'll have double-day workouts, a visit to the FSU Sports Performance Lab, an ice bath, breathing, and sauna workshop, and of course, 2 exciting max-out sessions on Saturday. You'll have the option to come in for the full 5-day experience, just visit for the weekend, or if you can only make one day work, you can pick a day pass for any of the days. You can grab your spot and save $50 on registration when you use the discount code LASTSETPOD at checkout. All right, back to the show.
Like,
Right.
we don't push people away from the sport because they get all their lifts pressed out at nationals and they're 40 years old. Like, why are they going to compete again then?
Yeah, I think what you're saying is that masters lifters should be allowed to have no press out rule and take steroids. Is that correct?
Do they even test masters lifters? I'm not even sure. Hey, maybe that's halfway true already.
No, don't worry. It's testosterone replacement therapy.
Yeah, it's a certain age you can just get it prescribed,
Yeah, there was one guy at a Masters meet a couple years ago that I remember. I remember like watching him compete and just like looking at the guy I was coaching, and we were both like, "There's no way." And then I think like 3 months later, he ended up getting popped. It was kind of funny. But I'm like, dude, you're 45 and you have ab veins. Come on.
Yeah. So yeah, same kind of thing. It's like, okay, should masters lifters should they be subject to drug testing either, or the same exact scrutiny and kind of things as other stuff? That's another conversation. Yeah,
Absolutely.
There's different levels to the sport, and the rules should probably be different for those different levels.
Yeah, I can stand by that. Yeah.
Yeah, or even if it gets to saying like, the press out rule applies in A sessions, but not in any other session, or something like that, right? That would be crazy. But
yeah, I mean, I don't even think that they could do that because then the topic would be like every lifter in the B session, or if a lifter from the B session beats somebody in the A session, then it's always like, yeah, but like with an asterisk, you know what I mean?
I just put my entry total down low because I know I press out everything. So,
yeah, B session champion over here. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to go over your competition real quick?
Yeah, so I competed last week in Colorado, and I sort of had a funny thing going on with my mindset, probably like last nationals in Pittsburgh, where I was very much just like, oh, this is a train through meet, like, I don't have to go super hard in this prep, like, I just want to trust my programming and not overreach too much. And that was actually while I was staying with Hampton, so it was sort of a counterintuitive. This is talking about last nationals.
Mm-hmm.
And that should have been the prime time for training and going heavy and recovering like crazy too. But I kind of held myself back for some reason. And I did learn a lot through that experience that I was like, dang, like, if you do the work outside of the gym to earn the heavy lifts, take those heavy lifts in training and really prepare yourself well and push things. If you're in the position to push things, push things. Because, you see lifters that, end up in a hard grad school program or, start a 40-hour week job or, life moves on and they don't have the time to put towards those, big recovery things. And so for me, I had a big moment of realization compared to last year's nationals to this year's nationals where I'm like, hey, it is summer. Like, I'm not working full time. I don't even have I don't have assignments to turn in going into this meet. Like, let's push things. Let's really, go hard on the food outside the gym. Let's really sleep well. I was in such a lucky position that, like, if I, couldn't go to bed till 1, 2 a.m., I'll just sleep in and train in the afternoon. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, I can get perfect sleep every day because of that. Like, it's like, wow, like, this is crazy. So because I'm doing all those extra things to kind of earn the performance in my training and earn the heavy lifts, this prep was crazy going into this meet. Like, I was hitting, so the last 6 weeks, I was doing full snatches from the floor twice a week. And then 3 weeks before that, I was just doing them once a week for singles. So the last 9 weeks, every single day I snatched, I hit 120 or more on snatch. So I was and maybe missed like a couple times below that. So I was just super, super good consistency, especially in the snatch, which is something that I wouldn't say I've struggled with, but I haven't really seen the needle move as much on snatch performance as I have on clean and jerk performance in the last year. So just really good training. When it comes to like the clean and jerk, I was seeing a lot of progress there too. When it comes to my jerk, especially is usually what limits me. Gaining some body weight into this comp, going 94, super helpful. But overall, we showed up. I kind of knew I was capable of some really big numbers. Hit some huge numbers in the week prior, and I hit some really big openers. So 124 opener. I think I opened with 119 at the Arnold, and that was my heaviest opener I've hit in the past. So 5 kilos heavier on my opener there. I did 124, looked great. Then 129, looked really great. And then I missed 133 on my last attempt. It just wasn't quite there for that day. Kind of like what we talked about in the first question of this podcast. It was there the week before in training. I hit 33 in training. Just wasn't there on the comp day.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that just is what it is. It was a really good day still. 129 matches my comp PR from the Arnold this year. And that was a 3-for-3 performance. That was a third attempt. Now it's a second attempt. Good progress there. You kind of got to learn to find those ways of progress as you get more higher level, as you get more efficient in weightlifting. It's not like, oh, I'm going to hit a PR every competition. Oh, maybe I have some heaviest openers, but they still look great. Maybe I'm hitting the same numbers on second attempts that I used to hit on third attempts. And it's really obvious to me when I look at like long term. I look at Colorado Nationals from 2 years ago, and I think I've hit a PR on stage, 2 kilo PR with 113 kilos, and opening with 124 now. That's a pretty big difference, and being up 15, 16 kilos from 2 years ago. Snatch.
Took a crack at 33, so 20 kilos up from last year.
Yeah,
from 2 years ago.
And especially in the clean and jerk, I think I opened with what I snatched this year in the clean and jerks, and so
that's pretty cool.
Really big progress in just 2 years. 2 years is not that long of a time in weightlifting, so it's some really good progress for me. In the clean and jerk, I opened 64, hit 71 on my second attempt, and missed 76 on my third attempt. So I got silver across the board in the U23s. I was pretty happy. I hit some big lifts, and it was a 300 total, which I haven't actually done on the same day ever. So PR.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, we actually hadn't even totaled going into this meet, so I wasn't doing snatch and clean and jerk on the same days. So
what about when you hit a 33 and 77 in training?
Yeah, that was a Monday and then a Thursday.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So that's something my coach is kind of big on. He's like, I don't think you need to total. Like, I understand that's what happens in competition, but it, all things considered, you don't need to like train any very specific endurance from a snatch session where you just basically essentially work up to a 1 rep max with no pulls and no extra reps and
Mm.
going straight into clean and jerks after that. Like that snatch session is like, as long as you're fueling good and the cut wasn't crazy, like that snatch session should not like fatigue you like crazy. You
That's
should
an
be,
interesting point. Like it's almost, I mean, it's like almost like I was saying, like, if you're doing snatches and then pulls and then squats and then accessories, it's not that much different than doing snatches and clean and jerks.
in my opinion, competition day should be one of the least fatiguing days of that entire like prep leading up. It's the lowest volume day probably of any heavy day you've done. Um, it's really it should not be like a crazy stressor compared to the training you've been doing, and
That's a good point.
so that's something interesting. A lot of coaches really harp on totaling, and they might even total 3 or 4 days a week in their training. Probably with athletes that are too young to really need that anyway, or not strong enough relative. I think totaling is probably helpful for athletes that have a crazy strength reserve. Like they just, their squat is just crazy. They don't really need to work on the well-roundedness aspect. They just need to get better at the weightlifting movements. Then,
Hmm.
yeah, I definitely see the purpose there, and frequency, high frequency in that way is good. But if you're just kind of working on everything all at once, yeah, I think it's better to take that well-rounded approach. And there's a time and a place. So I'm, just because I am that athlete that's still working on everything, still working on my strength, my accessories, um, and my Olympic lifts, doesn't mean that I won't total going into like one big meet in a year, or maybe even two. Just not every single meet I do, or all 12 months of the school year of the not school year of the training year. I'm not totaling. Maybe it's 2 months of that
Yeah.
entire year, and so yeah, I just don't think there's a ton of value when it comes to that. I think it will sometimes when you total take away from your ability to really focus technically on say it's snatches. When you have to move on to clean and jerks and you only have so much time to train, and make it good training. So yeah, I think you can get in a little extra focus, do more reps, really push one movement more in one day, whether that's technically or with the weight, um, and then still make up that later in the week. Although, yeah, when you want that peak efficiency, when you want that best, result in Olympic weightlifting movements, totaling is important. You do want to be hitting high frequency Olympic lifts. You want to be snatching 3, maybe 4 times a week, maybe 5, who knows, as kind of an upper end 5 times a week snatching. Um, Most people don't need that though to get better. They're not at the stage where they need that. Um, I'm not at the stage where I need to snatch 5 times a week and that's what's best for me long term. It might be really good in the short term to get good at snatching, but as far as long term development, there's a give and a take when it comes to doing those really high frequency Olympic lifts. The more time you're putting into Olympic lifts in your training, the less time you're putting into accessory work, into strength work, to getting stronger. The less recovery you're able to have from all the work that you're doing by doing extra work in the snatch and clean and jerk. So always a give and take, always pros and cons when it comes to programming stuff like that. But overall, as far as, kind of back to the topic, as how nationals went, great meet, well run. I was very happy with, how our team performed. We brought like 18 athletes. It was pretty crazy. And we're looking forward to AO finals. This is the longest phase of building without a competition. So I got about 6 months until AO finals where I can really make a ton of progress. So hopefully we'll see some really big numbers, and I'm kind of debating. Do I cut down to 88 or do I stay at around 93 and a half body weight? 94 is where I'm at now.
I think you should go. I think you should stay 94.
Yeah. Why is that, you think?
I mean, I feel like if you're already there and you're pretty lean, like you're not
Yeah.
carrying much extra body fat. Like I don't see any reason that it makes sense to cut. Now, I mean, I have not also looked at the international numbers or anything like that. So if you're trying to make teams or make an NTP total or something like that, then listen to your coach first before you say that. But I think like it just seems to make sense to stay in that 94 and get more meets under your belt at 94 than it does to cut back down again.
Yeah, the international meet stuff is kind of out of the question for at least another 2 or 3 years. So I know that that's not really a short-term thing. And I'm actually pretty good at like losing or gaining weight. Like when I put my mind to it, I can gain weight, yeah, at the rate I want to, or lose weight at a solid. Like I'm very in tune with my body, even without tracking macros and stuff. Like I have a really good sense for what I'm eating, so I can lose or gain pretty well in my control, or maintain, without having to think about it super hard. Um, so I'm in a good spot there. I kind of the reason for cutting to 88 would be for a FISU international team potentially in the year 2026. That's one that I know I'm not beating Crisanto D'Agostino at 94 for University Nationals, unless he, has a horrible accident, or something like that, or bombs out. Yes, love Santo. So going 88 would probably give me a better chance to go on that international team. And I
Mm.
do need about a 320 total to, or a three, no, it's 312 total for that FISU international trip.
At
So
88 or at 94?
at 88, I believe it's 320 at 94. So
Okay.
8 kilos different there. I'm at 310 training total at around 93 body weight. So, you know, to go 88, I would probably get down to around 90 or so, 88 or 89.5 morning weight, and then kind of do a bit of a water cut for the rest of it. But
Mm.
you know, I think there is a bit of body recomp that I'd like to do, as well.
Up next, we shout out a few lifters that you should know about. But first, have I told you about the Bodybuilding program? One thing I realized a few years ago as a burnt out weightlifter is that there's no rules for how a weightlifting program is supposed to look. You don't have to push through heavy snatches and clean and jerks on a daily basis, especially if this is a hobby for you. That's when I made the switch to OlyBuilding, a style of training with a true 50-50 balance between Olympic lifting and bodybuilding. Not just a few sets of some accessory work that is, let's be honest, lazily picked at the end of the workout. So if you want to focus more on building muscle without losing your Olympic lifts, then check out the 8-week OlyBuilding program linked in the description below. And you can save 20% at checkout when you use the discount code LASTSETPOD. All right, back to the show.
So, I mean, as far as just like for where I've been at other points in my life, I think just a bit of a cutting phase and then back into bulking as I've been kind of gaining weight for the last year and a half would just be comfortable on my body. Gaining weight just continuously through a really long period of time, it can get mentally taxing too. Like a lot of times I'm hating the sight of my food that I'm forcing myself to eat lately.
Yeah, that's
Um,
real.
Even just to maintain weight. So it can be nice to have a bit of a break, even if it's just pulling off the gas pedal and trying to gain, and eating around training and with my appetite cues. Because there's a lot of times where, when I've cut in the past, it's funny. I'll look at I'll be eating, and I've been full for like the last 10 bites, but I'm keeping myself eating. And then I'm like, wait, I'm cutting right now. Why am I eating so much? Like I'm so used to just stuffing myself to the point of uncomfortable, not feeling good. So there's a conversation around that where it's like mentally, my body's just like, dude, we're tired of shoving food in your face. So that's kind of something there. I'm definitely leaning on the 88 cut, but we'll see. When it comes to rankings, when it comes to entries, those classes are only 6 kilos apart.
Yeah.
It would be fairly easy, with 2 months notice to fill out one more or go down. When it comes to long term, I definitely see myself more at 94 like a year from now. But as a bit of a short term thing, going back down to 88 and being like the leanest, kind of biggest, most efficient 88 for like a few meets, and then maybe coming back up to 94. But my coach would say the same thing kind of you said. He was like, well, if you're just going to be 94 in the future, just stay 94 and keep getting stronger there. Which that's definitely a conversation. So I don't know. Still thought to be had about it. I'm not set any one way. Let me know your guys' opinions in the comments on what you
Yeah,
think
if
I
you
should.
want to see Calvin clean and jerk 200, tell him he needs to be a 94.
Shit, I just get up to like 97 and do that.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. All right, let's go into our shout out. So I wanted to know, I wanted to get your idea. Who do you think was the most underrated lifter, or one of the most underrated lifters going into nationals? I've got a few on my mind here. One of them actually blew me away. I was very, very surprised by this. But who do you have?
It's hard to say like an underrated lifter because a lot of the times, everybody either knows about them or understands their abilities, or hasn't heard of them. I was definitely impressed. We covered Angel Quintero on the podcast once or twice even,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure that he was necessarily getting the recognition, in my mind, that he maybe deserved. That kid's a very good lifter, and he snatched 130 in the training hall after he lifted as well, which is absolutely bonkers. That's definitely one that came to mind just because that's like huge totals. But for me, the most in my face person that quite literally he was in my session was Kyle Martin Jr. So he's a kid. He might take a bit of a more unconventional approach to a meet day compared to other people. And if you followed him on Instagram, you might see him post his 4 Monster Energies in the back room and say "Live a hero" or I think "Live a hero" or "Die a coward" is what he posts on his story. With a pyramid of 1,000 milligrams of caffeine, and even more crazy in my mind is the Caniac combo post weigh-ins. I actually asked him. We were weighing in, and I saw he didn't have any like weigh-in food, and I know he does the Caniac combo. I'm like, yo, Kyle, like, where's the Caniac? He's like, my dad's got it upstairs. I'm like, all right, like, of course. And just the sheer like willpower and I don't know, like you gotta be so confident in your abilities to slam a Caniac combo and then go out there and set a junior American snatch record with 151 kilos. Crazy lift. He went 3 for 3 in the snatches. Just absolutely like dominance in that lift, especially weighing 94 kilos. That won him juniors, U23s, and U25s. I believe he was best lifter for U23 and U25 as well. So just really good. I think he was second best lifter for juniors. I think his teammate Ryan actually beat him.
Oh
Which,
yeah.
speaking of garage strength, they're always pumping out some crazy athletes. Bringing some really good people to the national stage. Working with Dane Miller, working with Kyle and Ryan since they were kids. You know,
Dude, and
uh,
what's crazy about Garage Strength too is that they've got great lifters, but they're not like recruiting athletes, great lifters. They're developing athletes from the ground up to be incredible
you
lifters.
see a
Like
lot
that
of
is nobody's doing that.
you see a lot of coaches nowadays where you might look at their like roster and they got some really good athletes, but most of them were already good before they started working with that specific coach. And it's, in my opinion, it's rare to see somebody who can turn a 12-year-old into a national champion by the time they're 18. And just like do that consistently, do that multiple times, do
And
it with
Garage
such.
Strength has been doing that for like a decade and a half.
Yeah, Jake the Snake on Instagram and Haley
Yep.
Reichart, two such good athletes. That were Jake, from the time he was in like middle school, was with Dane and Garage Strength, and seeing the dominance in that gym across sports. So seeing NFL players training there, seeing the all-time American record holder in the discus. He's like, I believe he has like the third or fourth best mark of all time in the discus across the world. Is one of their athletes there. That again, another long term. I'm talking like 10 years working there at Garage Strength. Shout out Dan, dude. One of the coaches I admire the most, in weightlifting, I'd say.
100% for sure. All right, so and this is a shout out, but this is also definitely the underrated shout out here. This is Jenny Vardanian. So she was a 2016 Olympian, won gold at this competition with a 108 snatch, a 135 clean and jerk in the 86 kilo weight class. This is her first time on the national stage since 2020 because she's a brand new mom, which is absolutely insane. So she tied her best snatch ever, and she was only 5 kilos off of her best ever clean and jerk as like an Olympian. And this is after having a kid. I don't feel like people are giving this enough credit. This is insane. Nobody does this. except for Jenny Bardanian. It's absurd. It is ridiculous. I think that was this. Those were the results from the competition that was the most impressive to me. Was that, and because it's. I mean, like, are we talking like? Is she going to make an Olympian run? Is she going to make a run at 2028 Olympics? Like, could she?
As
I
a
mean,
mom and business owner, and probably way more responsibilities now than she had when she was training at like the Olympic Training Center back in the day. You know,
right.
wow.
I mean, and especially, I mean, if she manages to pull that off, that we're talking like, what is? I wonder what the gap between one Olympics to the next, what the biggest gap that anybody in any sport has ever had, where they competed at one, didn't compete for several times, and then competed at another once they just got back into it. That would be crazy. A 12-year gap between one Olympics to the next, that'd be insane. But I mean, she might be able to pull it off, man. I don't know.
Yeah, at that 86 weight class, I'm trying to think of who you know the other successful female athletes in the U.S. are, and I'm not having a ton come to mind right now. I think that usually the super heavyweight category has some heavy hitters like Mary Tyson
Yeah.
Lappin, or Sarah Robles, or even a handful of other really good athletes that are clean and jerking in the 140s as a super heavyweight woman. And so those are some really good athletes there, but it seems like the 86 category is sometimes lacking, or that heavyweight women's category. And so, you know, I'm excited to see what she can put together. And also, she is a damn good lifter technique-wise.
Dude.
You look at her lifts, snatches, super crisp. You know, there's no question about the movement quality there. And then one thing about her clean and jerk, especially in the jerk, I really like how she's smooth into the dip, just super smooth and controlled and repeatable dip and drive in her jerk. And every single attempt she did at nationals looked the same, on snatches, on clean and jerks. That, you know, they just look really really good, high quality, repeatable movement, and that's super important in this sport. And that's why one of the reasons I'm sure she's gotten so far. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and that makes sense too, because Norik back in the day was also pretty. I think widely regarded as like one of the better technicians in the United States when he was competing too. So, you know, makes sense. They've got a good system going on over there for sure.
Yeah, I was kind of mad at myself. I didn't go check out their gym, Vardanian Weightlifting, while I was in Colorado, but I didn't quite have time or training to do after I competed. So, take a break after nationals. That's my other shout out. Shout out to my break after nationals, because
shout out taking a break.
yeah, that's you know, a lot of people need to do that. So
yeah.
I sure am. I went camping in Maine. It was a great time, and yeah, I know a lot of my other teammates needed a break. You know, those aches and pains, they start catching up to you, and so.
Oh yeah, everybody's got to take a week off after competition. In my opinion, I think it's really important, or at least a couple days for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll go ahead and wrap it up there. I think. Calvin, where can people find you?
People can find me at Calvin Lackey 81kg on everything.
And you guys can find me at Big Ben Strength on everything. Make sure to check out our programs. Calvin just dropped a new high volume weightlifting program. If you guys have listened to the podcast, we harp on high volume training all the time. It's a fantastic program. I've personally run it for my cleans and squats, and it is a game changer. So I highly recommend you guys go check that out. Linked in the description below. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.
Yeah.